Welcome,
Yes,
Perry, to the show. It's so good to have you here. How are you today?
thanks. I'm good. I do have my dog in my lap,
So
but
cute.
we're good. We're set.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, I just wanted to talk to you first and foremost about why you decided to become an online dating coach. How did you get on that trajectory? And I also love the way you market it as specifically an online dating coach, but is that all you do? Just focus on online dating?
So, the reason I got into online dating was because I was so overwhelmed by the dating apps. But I realized early on that it's kind of just the way of the future. And I'm based in New York City. So, it's not like there's a shortage of men around me, but I just really hated them and was so
Mm-hmm.
frustrated by them. And so I set out on like a journey to find love, find my partner a few years ago. And I hired my own life coach who really helped me realize that, the dating apps are an incredible tool and that you can see them as a tool or you can see them as the bane of your existence,
Mm.
but they really can be used in an incredible way. And so the reason I started doing my coaching was because I figured out this system to seeing the dating apps just as a platform to
Mm-hmm.
meeting people who you would not come across in your normal everyday life. And so that's what I teach. I teach from my own experience that you can delete the apps every other day, or you can create a healthy boundary with them and see them as a really great window towards meeting someone who's amazing and could be your partner in life.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
did you start on the dating apps? Because I know you said a few years ago. Was that during the pandemic? Because I know online dating has
No.
become really popular because of the pandemic. I know that we're 2 years out of the pandemic now. Um, so it might be a little bit different, but I know that it's been like an upward trend with
Mhm.
since the pandemic. So you said that you started online dating before um the pandemic?
Yeah. Yeah. In
Yeah.
2017, it was really when OkCupid was really popular. And I remember a friend of mine was like, girl, you need to get on OkCupid. I've had so many dinner dates recently and had so many guys buy me dinner. It's great. And
Right.
I was like, what? Like, that to me was just so interesting and
Hmm.
abnormal. And I had not heard about it before. So my curiosity led me to the OkCupid website. And I was like, oh my, it was really
Like a different
weird,
world, right?
totally different world and very like scary but exciting. And I started out on OkCupid. It was like I think the most popular youthful, dating site instead of like Match.com or eHarmony. But yeah, I just remember that was like my foray into it. And what got me to hiring a life coach was that I kept having these like weird interactions and bad dates. And I was like, gosh, I hate this. This is so frustrating. And then it led me to her, and she was like, is it frustrating or are you just frustrated with it and your behavior is
Mm,
just poor with it? Yeah.
right. If you don't
Yeah.
mind me getting personal, were you
That's okay.
able to find love from the dating app? From
Yeah.
using the
So
dating apps?
yeah. I met my current boyfriend, my partner. We live together.
Awesome.
Yeah. And we met on Bumble. And actually, we did just meet right before the pandemic. But I had been on the dating apps, like,
Mm-hmm.
I said, for a long time. And that it was definitely just a journey of just
Yeah.
like, oh, so many different bad dates and lessons. And I learned a lot. I really did, but it wasn't easy. And I love to see, especially right now when we're really homebound, that the dating apps again are coming in clutch for
Right,
dating,
right.
you know?
Really,
Mhm.
really coming in clutch. Okay,
Yeah.
so I do want to talk about some like how to get success from dating apps, right? Because a lot of
Hmm.
people are just from conversations that I have with friends and just things that I see online, like it's a struggle bus sometimes
Hmm.
from like ghosting or just going on weird dates and
Hmm.
just not getting matches that you or like not getting likes from people that you would be interested in. So how
Hmm.
do you get the most out of a dating app? Like, what are some do's or things that people need to keep in mind when online dating?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's all about what you can control, right? Like everything in life comes with ups and downs, positives, negatives. Like it's just life, right? Like you could be having the best meal of your life and then it's like one little side dish and you're like, "Oh, that's gross." Like that's
Right.
what the dating apps are, that there's good mixed with bad. And so it's you and your relationship with how you see the apps. Of course, we're going to come across people who are not our people and they really, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't want to be mean, but like you'll come across them and you're like, oh God, like not for me. It's how you see them, it's how you
Mm-hmm.
go about them. If you are binging them, if you're swiping for hours and focusing so much about how they're just not working out, like, yeah, that's what's going to continue to happen.
Right.
Um, but if you truly like create a little bit of a healthier relationship with them and see them as like, well, maybe I will meet someone. And it's just all about your commitment towards giving people a chance and meeting, new people and having conversations with someone who like maybe there's something in their profile that interests you, but maybe they have weird photos or so, like just giving them a chance.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So would you recommend talking to multiple people at the same time, or should
Mhm.
you like focus on like one or two people that you find interesting or that you match with and like talking to them and seeing how
Mhm.
that goes rather than talking to like 5 or 10 people that you may have matched with?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it depends because I don't think you should put all your eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that you should be like focused on finding one person and like that's where you kind of get lost and
Mm-hmm.
things can tend not to work out and then that leads to disappointment. I think you should have conversations with multiple people. I think you should at the dating app phase of just swiping see it as very casual, having a good time, chatting with people, having flirty combos. That's the goal. And
Yeah.
talk to, you don't want to talk to as many people as like you possibly can manage, but talk to a few bit of people, like
Mm-hmm.
have different experiences because not only will that be fun and lighthearted, but it'll tell you what do you want, what do you like, and what do you really want to see from someone who you'd be willing to meet up with in person.
Right. Speaking of keeping things lighthearted and stuff, one of the questions people tend to ask when they're on dating apps is like, oh, so like, what are you looking for? Like, why are you on this platform? So should people be like, I'm looking for a serious relationship and like I literally want to get married in 2 years and and be pregnant by the third year? Or should they just
Yeah.
kind of be like, oh, I'm seeing where things go? Like, how honest should you be about what you're looking for when you're talking to someone in a way that doesn't necessarily scare them off, but you're also like keeping it 100?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kind of put yourself in their shoes. Like, what would not scare you? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really important to be honest and say, like, hey, I am looking for something that's long term. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking to find someone and get married tomorrow, but I'm also not looking for something super casual. And if that's what you're looking for, if maybe it's something different, like, hey, I just, I'm looking to have dating app experiences and like just meet people and see what's out there, you know, kind of free because this is a question that absolutely comes up a lot and it's something you should ask and it's something you should talk about because you want to be on the same page about it.
Mm-hmm.
So phrase it like it's your kind of go-to.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my whole thing was like I wasn't a casual girl. I was looking to date someone who wanted a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like honestly my very first thing that I worked on with my life coach. How do I say to them, I'm looking for a relationship? And she's like, just say it, just say, like, hey, I'm just not a casual girl.
Mm.
I'm just not. I like you, like, I like our conversation, and I'm looking for someone who wants a relationship, wants to date someone long term.
Mm. That's a good
And
one.
if they can't receive it, if they can't rise to that occasion, or if they just are weird about it, that tells you so much,
Mm-hmm.
like that
Mm-hmm.
just really tells you if they're like, that's weird or they're put off, that really is a sign that maybe they're just not at your level,
Right.
you know?
Right. And I think that it's important to be honest because, if they decide that they don't want something serious or they're looking for something more casual and they start acting weird, I think it's better for you to kind of know than like waste your time with someone. And they're not
Mhm.
necessarily rejecting you, they're just not ready for that experience for
Yeah.
something that's like long term. So I
Yeah.
totally I totally understand that. So my next question is really about like when you're talking to someone and you realize like this is not the person that works for me at this
Yeah.
point. So a lot of people ghost people on dating apps. Like, what is the proper like etiquette in terms of kind of letting somebody know, hey, I'm not interested. We had a first date, or maybe we didn't even get to the date part, but we've been talking long
Mhm.
enough. But I'm just like not looking for anything. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
trying to progress further with this.
Absolutely. It's a burning question because we've all been there.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the worst, like, I had not a ghoster, but I don't know what I would call him, like a zombie attack.
Mm-hmm.
I messaged with this guy, thought he was so cute. We had like
Mm-hmm.
tentatively set plans for a night. And I just remember being on the subway and I was like, gosh, I haven't heard from him. And like we had plans. So I texted him, I was like, hey, are we still on for tonight? And he was like,
Right.
what? Like, I don't remember that.
Oh my
He
God.
totally just gaslit me and was like, we didn't set plans. And I was like, what the heck? Like, no, we did. Like, we didn't
Right.
set anything like meet here at 8, but we talked about let's go out Thursday night.
Right.
And then I texted him and he was like, I don't remember. And I was like, oh, so much worse, so much more awkward.
Right.
But again, it's like, put yourself in their shoes. I remember going on dates where I was so jazzed, so excited. You get there and you're like, ah, this is just
This is not
not it.
it.
This just
Yeah.
isn't syncing up. There's the click. And it's so hard because I think women intuitively know very quickly
Mm-hmm.
if you're
Mm-hmm.
hooked in with someone, if there's potentially something there, or if there's nothing there at all.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to ghosting or like letting someone know, be honest. How would you want to be told, right? Like
Right. Right.
at some point, we're all mature adults and you just got to say, I think the best way to do it is obviously like not in person if you can avoid it, because that's just real awkward. I did have one
Yeah.
guy once say, like, I'd love to see you again. And I was like, I'm not
Um,
sure. Like, oh, it was so hard. But I would just text them as
mm-hmm.
soon, do not wait for them to text you, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you know right away, just like next morning, like, hey, I wanted to thank you for last night. I thought about it and I just don't see us working out, but like, I wish you the best.
Mm-hmm.
And my best suggestion is don't leave it open ended.
Mm-hmm.
Do not end that text with anything like that they could really respond to or hook you in with or like anything like that. Very short and sweet. End it with a period,
Mm.
you know?
That is a
Yeah.
good point. So
Yeah.
I guess, okay, so the next question I have for you is what is the best way to set up your profile? Just so that you're like railing in the right people. Because I see some profiles that are like you can tell that they really put some thought into it, and then I see other profiles that it's like, oh, they just like threw their pictures on there, and don't really care. So like what is or maybe they care but they're just not obviously marketing themselves properly. But what is your advice when people come to you like how should I set up my profile?
Yeah. Well, actually, this is a little plug, but in my Instagram bio, I have a link to a free PDF that tells you exactly how your profile should be set up so that you can amplify your matches. But basically, you want it to be authentic to you. You
Mhm.
want it to show off, your hobbies, your interests, who you are. The picture should tell a story. And the best thing that you can do is put little like hints in there so
Mm.
that someone can really quickly look at your profile, because that's how we all look at these dating app profiles is we look at them in 10 seconds to get an idea of who this person is, what they're about. So what you can do is put like a picture of you hiking,
Mhm.
and then someone could be like, oh, you like hiking? Have you been here or there? So give them something to converse with you about. Give them little nuggets. Make the profile really reflect who you are. And that's going to be one of the best ways for someone to get an idea of who you are and amplify your chances of getting them to swipe right.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. So, another question. How long, like if you match with somebody and you guys are chatting, what is the time frame you would usually recommend before like going on a date with them, whether it's a virtual date or an in-person date? Like how long is too long of like chatting via app?
Yeah, we don't want no pen pals. That's the whole thing. You really don't. And that is such
Yeah.
a surefire way of like crushing any of the immediate fire starter that you might
Mm-hmm.
have. So for me, communication is like a number one. And it's funny because I had a girlfriend who was like, I don't want to text. Like, don't text. If I like your photo and you like me and we chat a little bit, like set the date and don't talk to me. For me, I'm like,
That's
what?
interesting. Yeah.
No, like I hate that. I was always looking for a guy who would banter with me through texting because
Mm-hmm.
that to me is a way that my heart gets an idea of who the person is.
Mm-hmm.
I want to
Mm-hmm.
see, can you text with me? Can you flirt with me? Can you keep up with me? Like, I'm a little off the deep end with
Mm-hmm.
that. So with my current boyfriend, my partner and I like texted so much. The day that we matched, actually, we texted like two messages.
Right.
Then he forgot about me. He never responded to my last message. 2 weeks later, I got a message from him and I was like, oh, like I matched with this guy so long ago.
Right.
And he was like, I'm so sorry, like completely forgot your message because he was just like matching with a bunch of girls and he
Mm-hmm.
just I got buried in his conversation threads. He came back and I remember being like, you're so lucky I'm still here.
Right.
But we spent that day when he re-sparked the convo just chatting
Mm-hmm.
and bantering and flirting. We spent the next day doing the same. I have a rule that I need to talk to someone on the phone or FaceTime before meeting them in person.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a call on the phone, and then I was like, what are you doing tomorrow? Let's get coffee. So 3 days for me. But it definitely depends. I know often our lives are busy. Sometimes we're traveling for work or whatever.
Right.
So I would really encourage like 1 week max, maximum. You don't want to delay. You really will put out the fire.
Right. Right.
And again, if someone's like stringing you along, it's a great way to say like they are looking for a pen pal.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that a lot of women really are like, well, the guy has to set the plan and he has to make that gesture and he needs to be chivalrous. Why is my question. When
Mm-hmm.
I work with women and men and I'm always very encouraging of like, do you want to go meet this guy for coffee? That was me and my boyfriend. I was like, this
Mm-hmm.
guy's great, but maybe he's a loser and I don't know and I need to find out stat.
Right.
If you want to meet for a drink or for coffee or for a walk, ask. Sometimes guys are shy and really afraid of rejection because
Mm-hmm.
society has set them up to be the person to start, and initiate. That's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, if you're a girl and you're talking to a guy and you're vibing, be forward. And I swear, like, it's such a great sign to the guy because they're like, oh, they feel great. And that will only get them to want to make more of a gesture towards you.
That is such a good point. I think I'm definitely on that table as well. I'm like, if he's interested, like, he'll make the move. Like, obviously, I'll reciprocate my interest,
Mhm,
right? If he tries to talk to me. But I also do think that I'm definitely getting that mindset shift as well. Like, if I'm interested in someone, there's nothing wrong with being like, hey, do you want to hang out? But the only thing that I, that makes me a little nervous about that is that sometimes I've seen situations where you make the first move as a girl, and then throughout your whole courtship or relationship, like you're always the one making plans or like trying to do stuff,
mhm,
and he never takes the role of like also like courting you as well.
mhm,
And I know that a lot of women like to be, you like to be courted, you want to feel like you're wanted.
mhm.
So how, like, okay, after you ask for the coffee and you go out on the first date, how often should you be the one still pushing to make additional plans if you notice that the person you're interested in isn't like you guys are talking, you guys had a great date, but he's not making additional plans for like a second date or something? Do you continue to be the person to make the first move?
No. And this is a belief that I've like really held true because you're right. People want to feel pursued. And I think this carries over from the initial starting of a relationship or just dating into long-term relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Like my boyfriend and I, like, we both take on the responsibility of planning dates. We have a date night every week that we try to stick to, and it's on both of us
Mm-hmm.
to see something and be like, oh, we should go do this, or here's a restaurant, let's go plan. But I'm not expecting him to make every date night. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, and it's a lot for him, right?
Right, right, of course.
So it's 50-50 or 60-40, and that's how relationships and dating is all the time.
Right.
Yes, there are women who have this idea, and honey, if that's how you are, good for you. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
hard, maybe it won't. That's your thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I see the most success from my clients who, when I encourage them to do this, they take it and run with it. If you make a small gesture, like a lot of the time, men do not know if you actually like them or not. So if you
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, I'd love to meet you in person, or hey, I'm so curious to see like what cocktail you'd order, or something that's a little flirty in a gesture, it's the confirmation for them that you're interested. And I really like, I believe that you would be surprised to see how they react.
Right.
I think the chances are that they'd be like, oh, okay, she likes me, cool. And then they come back. But if the person isn't reciprocating, and if you find yourself always being the starter of, plans or conversations or anything, like it's all on you, heck no.
Yeah, right. That is not a good
That's just,
sign.
do not, I don't care how hot they are, how rich they are, how whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because that is an indicator of what you will always expect. If they don't show you interest in the beginning, they will never. And that's just not worth your time.
Yeah, yeah, you shouldn't have to claw for interest.
No, anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Hmm.
I guess my next question for you is, what is your favorite dating app? I know that you met your partner on Bumble. I know Bumble is a really popular one, but
Yeah.
what do you have? Is that your favorite? Or, and if it is, do you have another one that you recommend to your clients?
I love Bumble and I love Hinge, but I also love OkCupid.
Mm-hmm.
And I also encourage everybody to explore all the apps. The apps are like the hotspots in your city, like
Right.
the cool coffee shop, the cool bar, the cool
Right.
restaurant. You
Right.
want to go where the people are going. That just tells you that it's worthwhile. You
Right.
don't really want to go where no one is, because chances are like the coffee there has grinds in it, or like the food there is overcooked.
Mm-hmm.
So Bumble, Hinge, OkCupid, and sort of Tinder are like the hottest apps right now and will give you the best experience. But I also encourage people, I have clients who like going on Match.com
Mm-hmm.
because they're kind of just like set in this thought of like, hey, if they're paying for it, they're more serious, and I want serious guys. And it totally runs the gamut. But
Right.
Bumble, Hinge, OkCupid, Tinder, those are the hottest, most popular and active users right now for dating apps.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of going back to going on dates and stuff, what are some recommendations for like first dates? Do you recommend first dates that are like you guys have an opportunity to talk some more, or like do you recommend first dates where you go to the movies where you can't really talk that much? No. So
Oh my
what are
God,
like your
no.
what are your top recommendations for like first dates? I know that you mentioned like being able to FaceTime or talk virtually before going on a
Yeah.
date. I also want to ask about that. Like, do you recommend doing that before meeting in person? Does it matter?
I really encourage everybody to have a phone call or a FaceTime with anybody who you're considering seeing in person, for safety, for confirmation that they are who they are,
Mm,
and for the all important voice connection, right? Like, voice. like intonation, and that is so indicative of if you are hooked, right? Like
Right, right.
I started this rule when I went out with a guy who was great on the app. Like I'm telling you, so everything what I wanted on paper. And I met him in person, and the second he said, "Hey, Perry," and his voice was just very high pitched, and it was just I completely was turned off. And I mean, he was a great
So
guy. He
fair.
brought me a chocolate bar because I was telling him, oh, I love dark chocolate. And I'm like super into like that is my late night like snack. And so we had this whole conversation. Great guy, great gesture. But oh my goodness, I just was like, no, dude,
Mm-hmm,
in one
mm-hmm.
second. And that sucks for him, for me, because I didn't know. And so after that date, I said, I'm not ever going to go out with a guy until I hear his voice and I know that he is who he is. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those things that are, we have this tool, use the tool, right? And it's also really good, in my perspective, like a maturity indicator. If you ask a guy, hey, I'd love to like chat with you a bit on the phone tonight or FaceTime, I think it'd be fun. And he's like, ew, why? Or like, oh, I don't like FaceTime, or I don't like, great indicator that he's maybe not as mature as he is,
Mm-hmm.
like as you want him to be. Also, trying to remember the rest of your question.
No, it's okay.
Um,
I was asking like
great
what,
first date,
yeah, great first
right?
date.
Movie dates, terrible. Do not do that. Like, I can't stress that enough how awkward it is.
Mm-hmm.
The best first dates, in my opinion, again, it's all my opinion, like take it or leave it. I think the best date is something that's casual and active. So, coffee and a walk, amazing.
Mm.
I think something where there's really low pressure is such a great way to just get to know somebody.
Right.
I met my boyfriend for coffee. We both really don't drink, we're not like big into alcohol. So, we love coffee and we love food and doing activities. And that really, I think, helped us to not make it so serious. It wasn't
Right.
so intense. It wasn't like, get dressed up and meet me at this bar and, look good and feel good
Right.
and like
Right.
dress cute and smell good. And like, that's a lot of stress and pressure, So I encourage people to have a walking date, or if you can think of anything that's just kind of like up and moving, super good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even like, I don't know, window shopping, going to a museum, like just things like that. Because when you're not having to sit and stare into someone's eyes, so much better, so much
Right.
easier,
Yeah.
like that nervous energy has somewhere to go. You're not like confined to a table. Like you can kind of loosen up a bit easier.
Right. Totally agree with you. It's so funny that that example you gave about um going on a coffee date with that guy and like hearing his voice and just being like, "Oh, I can't do this." It's I had so I have a segment on my podcast called hashtag Keep It Wise where people listeners write in about dilemmas and I give them like my 2 cents and
I love it.
literally I
Yeah.
had someone write in the other day about how she connected with this guy. He was everything she wanted on paper. And she had been like on dating apps for a while, so she's been super intentional. She wanted like she's looking for something serious. And she met this guy who had everything she wanted on paper. And then she met up with him and just like was not attracted to him at all. And like she kept trying to give it a chance because she was like not trying to come off shallow or anything. But she just like I'm not attracted to him. Like there's no like chemistry or like spark. So she eventually like she was just asking about like how to turn him down. Um, so I find that like I think
Oh,
you're absolutely right. I think
so
it's
hard.
important to do like virtual dates.
Yeah, it's like screening someone
Yeah, it's like
in a
screening
in a
someone.
way that's like for everybody's best interest.
Yeah.
The rest of that story of like I met that guy, we were actually went to this speakeasy bar, which I was like, I really wanted to go to. And so I recommended it and we went. And first interaction, I was like, oh, his voice is weird. Like that's just not that doesn't feel good to me.
Right.
And he gives me this chocolate bar. I'm like, oh, he's a nice guy. All right, let me give it a chance. So we're at the speakeasy where the menu is like a booklet, and I didn't see what he ordered. And so I ordered my drink, he ordered his drink, and then we went and sat down, and his drink came. I didn't know what he was drinking, and I didn't really ask because it wasn't like a gin and tonic. It was like they were all weird, whatever. So
Right.
the bartender comes around again after we'd been talking for a little bit, and I'm giving him a chance, and we're trying, to connect. And the guy's like, "You want another round?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Guy goes away. I'm like, "Oh, what did you get?" Like the same cocktail. And he's like, "Yeah, I got this like mocktail. It's like a, juice thing." And I was like, "Oh, you're not like drinking?" He's like, "Oh, actually, I'm in recovery." And I was like,
Oh, like so he
"Oh,
was like an
he
alcoholic.
was an alcoholic."
Ooh,
And
okay.
I had no words. I was like so confused because it,
Right.
again, so inauthentic. If you are in recovery
Why are
and
we at
you
a bar?
take a girl to a bar, why are we at a bar? Second, why did you let me order two drinks? I'm
Right.
about to get my second alcoholic drink when you have had zero drinks. What? Gabe was just, oh, it made me so, and
I'd be
actually
so
being,
uncomfortable.
I was so uncomfortable, but being the person that I am, I was just like, forget it. Like this date is already going down. I just like told him the worst stories. I remember telling him like very embarrassing like things that, you do not share on the first date because I was like, I
Right.
don't care. I don't have anything
Right.
to lose. Like,
Right.
and I just remember being like, all right, see you later. It was just so bad. And
Yeah.
yes, like these are not things that necessarily people can volunteer very effortlessly. I just encourage more connection with people before you meet them in person to save yourself and save them from that awkward level of
Yeah.
connection. Like it's just
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, I'm like,
Awful.
sir, why are we at a bar
Yeah,
if
I was
you
like,
are in
what?
recovery?
He's
That
like,
makes
yeah,
no sense.
in college, I just like kind of got carried away. And I was like, no shame. Like, literally,
Right.
I'm not a big drinker. Like, when I was always making exceptions for dates, So
Hmm.
I just felt so duped. I felt so mad. I was like, you lied to me, dude.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I
Right,
was
right.
pissed.
That is
Ugh,
so
not
weird.
good.
Yeah,
So
that's
weird.
very, very, very strange.
Yeah.
Um, I was also going to say that, like, okay, so in terms of like the apps and stuff, what are some mistakes that you find, like when you're working with clients, that you see that they're making? Because I know sometimes I feel like dating apps, I don't know if they make people more superficial or less superficial because like you have like millions of people at your disposal. I feel like
Hmm.
people are like, I all these 10 things on my list that like
Hmm.
I'm looking for in a partner, they
Hmm.
literally need to be met. So like yeah, so how do you balance people's like, yes, you should be going for what you're looking for, but also be open-minded if somebody isn't
Hmm.
necessarily like your perfect um match, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, when you mentioned the 10 list, it segues me into talking about non-negotiables. You should have five, and they should be height, religion, location, like ethnicity, if that's a big thing for you, and I don't know, like diet, like if they're vegetarian and you're not,
Right.
you shouldn't have 10 things. That's just too many
Hmm.
of things that are non-negotiables for you, right? Like your list of things that they must have should be around 3 to 5. And you should not consider like, oh, there's someone out there that's better. I think that's the biggest mistake is that people, one, are too quick on the apps. Like they're looking at someone's profile and swiping in a second. That's really not great. And two, they're just so nitpicky and they don't see
Mm.
someone's potential and they don't see past weird photos or, other flaws that might be visible. I think you kind of have to err on the side of optimism and talk to the person a little bit.
Hmm.
When you talk to someone and they have weird responses, you can always unmatch. Like you have no
You don't owe them
reason
anything.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't owe them anything. So I always encourage my clients to go slow, monotask, be focused on looking at the person's profile, reading their biography, reading their responses, And then if they really are not someone who you can see yourself connecting with, then you can swipe left. Fine. But I encourage people to say, these are the 5 things that are super important to me. I need someone who lives 30 minutes away from me. I can't date someone who lives in the next state over. Like I am 5'9", so I need a guy who's at least 6 foot or six
Mm,
one. Like the things that are actually really important to you. And then going from there, like don't be so quick, slow it down.
that's a really good point. The five non-negotiables should not be 10.
Hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that you should definitely have 3 to 5 non-negotiables,
Hmm.
and then start from there. But then also, like, I feel like it's also important to be open-minded because, like you said, like nobody's perfect, and this whole idea of like, oh, I'm gonna find somebody better. There's always going to be somebody better, right? But I mean, that chase is never going to end. It's just gonna keep going and going and going and going, and
Yeah.
it's never gonna end. So I think there's definitely should be like a cap on that. Okay.
Hmm.
Do you think it's weird for people to use dating apps as a way of like meeting new people and like making new friendships? Not necessarily looking for like serious relationships, but like maybe they're new in the city, they're trying to get to know people. Um, do you think that's a silly way of using dating apps? Because I see that people use dating apps to like meet
Yeah.
people, but not necessarily for relationships sometimes.
I don't think it's great. I think it's a bit disingenuous. If you are, I think there's like spectrum where you could be a casual dater or you could be a serious dater. But if you're not a dater, then you really shouldn't be on the dating apps. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
go on Meetup, go on like Craigslist and see like what groups are like hanging out in your area. But if you're really looking for friends, I would just encourage people to be really authentic about that and open and honest and just say, hey, I'm looking to meet guys. Like that's a little bit weird to me. I don't know.
Right.
I think it's okay if you're like, I'm just trying to casually date, I'm not serious right now. I'm looking just to meet people. That's okay to be on a dating app. But if you're strictly looking just to expand your community,
Right.
not the place.
Right, right.
No. Yeah.
So, do you, in your client base, do you mostly work with women or do you work with women and men?
I work with women and men.
Okay. So,
Yeah, it's
what are,
pretty like split.
oh, good, good. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the biggest, like, complaints and things that men need help with in terms of the dating world? And what are some of the biggest complaints and things that women need help with from the dating world? Like, are they completely, like, different or are they kind of similar?
Men really need more confidence help and that encouragement that they are bringing something to the table, which is funny because I think our universal understanding of men is that they're so cocky and that they really don't need any help in that department. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the men who seek out dating coaches are actually like the men that I work with are so incredible and they're so sweet and they do need that confidence boost because they've been knocked down a lot. The women I work with are very confident and know that they're amazing and they want to find someone who's like just sees that immediately,
Right.
which is a really funny combo right there. And again, it's why like one of my baseline suggestions is like be authentic
Mm-hmm.
and be willing to meet someone halfway because you want to build that foundation together with anybody who you will connect with.
Right.
And you don't want to be the one who is like waiting for them to come to you. Put in a little bit of work and they'll put in work.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like we have different interests ultimately, but when you get together, it's really similar and shared.
Right, right. No, that is a good point. I was just curious because I know that, men and women tend to see the dating world completely different. But I think it's also important to talk about like people who aren't just like heteronormative. So do you
Mm-hmm.
work with people in the queer community and what
Yeah.
is their dating app experience like?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing this up because I agree. It's like we're not just all looking for men and women. Like we run the gamut as humans. And that's actually why I encourage people to use OkCupid. I see OkCupid as being the leader in sexuality, being kind of a spectrum and being
Right.
really just different, and people have a lot of different interests, and they are the best for people who are, LGBTQIA. There's
Yeah.
so many different options and so many different ways that you can, they offer different pronouns, and they offer just so many different, more inclusive options. That is the first app that I've seen do that. I know like Bumble, obviously, like, and Hinge, you can be gay on there, and like that's open and that's great. And there are people who have success on that. But OkCupid just crushes it when it comes to inclusivity. And so for the people that I work with who are gay and they don't really have specific set interests, and like like I work with bisexual people who are just looking for an amazing person. That's all
Right.
we want at the end of the day. So I encourage them to explore OkCupid, but I also encourage them to download Bumble and Hinge and Tinder and see how that feels, because I actually really believe that it's the person on the app, it's not the app that does the magic.
Right.
Like I had a friend who was so great on Hinge. Like she just had date after date, and I would go on Hinge and have no dates. So Bumble for me was amazing, and it was opposite for
Right.
her.
Yeah.
So it's more about who you are, what you bring, how you see the app, than really how the app is. But
Right.
I love OkCupid if you're thinking about someone who doesn't fit within the heteronormative world.
So overall, this has been such a great conversation. Like the main parts that I'm taking from everything that we talked about is just really about your intentions, like
Mm-hmm.
going into the and using the dating app. Like that's the most important thing, being as intentional as possible, and also being open-minded and also being patient. So that's what I'm hearing the most from it. Well, thank you so much. This was fun. But before I let you go, final words of wisdom to the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a slogan that I love. It does have to do with dating. It's not necessarily like, my wisest quote, but I know the dating apps suck. We know they suck. They're awful. They really put us through the gamut. It's a lot, but they work. And
Mm,
I think it is, again, an amazing way to meet people who you would not normally come across. And I believe in their power because so many people have had success with it.
yeah.
So be patient, be optimistic, do your thing, be focused on you. And that's where you will meet a person that is aligned with your values and your dreams, and just be, in the optimistic viewpoint that it will work and it'll work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Perry.
Yeah, so nice to connect. I loved all your questions. They're very spot on.